The river was unusually quiet that night. Not the quiet of peace, but the kind that pressed against your ears, making you wonder what had been swallowed by the darkness. Li Wen, a scholar on his way home after failing the provincial exam, stood at the riverbank with his travel bundle. The moon hung pale and thin above the horizon, its light stretching like silver threads across the rippling water. The ferry he had taken in the morning was nowhere in sight. The boatman had gone home hours ago, and yet he could not stay here. His mother was ill, and every hour mattered. As he stared into the mist rising from the river, a faint sound reached him, the creak of wood, the slow splash of an oar. Out of the fog emerged a small boat, long and narrow, painted black from bow to stern. No lantern burned at its prow, yet Li Wen could see it clearly, as if the moonlight bent itself toward it. At the stern stood a man, tall, thin, wearing a straw rain hat that hid his face. He did not call out to Li Wen, nor gesture for him to board. He simply held the oar, the boat gliding against the current with eerie smoothness. Li Wen hesitated. The air around the boat felt colder, but the thought of his mother's pale face overrode his unease. He cupped his hands in thanks and stepped aboard. Inside, he found several passengers sitting silently, their faces turned away or obscured by wide-brimmed hats. Not a word was spoken, not a cough, not the rustle of clothing, just the rhythmic dip of the oar. Li Wen sat at the far end, clutching his bundle. "How much for the crossing?" he asked softly. The ferryman did not answer. The river seemed endless. The mist thickened, swallowing the banks from view. The moon above dimmed, as though something unseen had passed before it. Li Wen began to feel a strange heaviness in his chest, his breath slower, his heartbeat faint. He tried to glance at the other passengers and noticed something that made his skin prickle. Their clothes were old, not just worn, but belonging to styles from decades past. A man's robe tied in a fashion his grandfather used to wear. A woman's hairpin shaped like the ones buried with the dead in his village. One of them, a young girl in pale green, turned her head slightly toward him. Her eyes met his. They were dark, glassy, reflecting no light. Her lips moved soundlessly. Li Wen's fingers tightened around his bundle. His mouth was dry. The oar kept dipping, water lapping softly against the hull. Somewhere far off, a bell tolled. Once? Twice. The girl in green whispered, barely audible, "Not yet." Before Li Wen could speak, the ferryman tapped the side of the boat with his oar. The boat shifted, turning sharply toward a point in the mist, where a faint glow shimmered, a cluster of lantern lights. The bank came into view, but it was not the one he knew. Li Wen stepped off the boat, his legs trembling as if the ground itself were swaying beneath him. The lantern light revealed a narrow riverside street, yet something felt wrong. The houses were dark, their windows shuttered tight. The air smelled faintly of incense, the kind burned at funerals. The other passengers disembarked without a sound. Their feet seemed barely to touch the ground as they walked ahead, vanishing one by one into the mist-veiled alleys. Li Wen turned to thank the ferryman, but the man was gone. The boat still floated at the bank, oar resting against its side, yet no one stood within it. He shivered and clutched his bundle. He had to find someone, anyone, who could tell him where he was. As he walked deeper into the street, he saw a figure, an old woman, stooped, carrying a bamboo basket. Her face was pale and deeply lined, but her eyes, sharp as a hawk's, studied him. "You're not from here," she said. "No, Auntie," Li Wen replied. I was on my way home and I took a boat." "A black boat?" she interrupted. Li Wen froze. "Yes," she sighed, glancing toward the river. "That ferry only comes for the dead. All who ride it have already left the world of the living." Li Wen's mouth went dry. "But I'm alive." The old woman's gaze softened. "Are you?" Her words struck something deep in his mind. His journey from the city, the exhaustion, the fever he'd been fighting for days. He remembered collapsing by the riverbank, his vision swimming. Perhaps he had never truly woken. He shook his head violently. "Number. My mother is waiting. She's sick. She needs me." The old woman's eyes glistened. She pointed down the road. "If your heart is truly not ready to leave, follow the sound of the bell. It will lead you back. But you must understand, not everyone can turn back once they've set foot on that boat." Far off, he heard it again. A single bell. Chime. Faint but clear. He ran. The street seemed endless, bending and twisting, the mist curling around him like ghostly fingers. The bell tolled again, closer this time. Ahead, a faint light shone. Not the cold glow of lanterns, but the warm, flickering light of an oil lamp. He stumbled toward it and found himself at another bank of the river. A small wooden skiff was tied there, its lantern casting a golden halo on the water. A young man stood by the oar, smiling faintly. "You're late," he said. "The tide is turning. Get in." Li Wen obeyed without a word. The skiff moved swiftly, the mist thinning with each stroke of the oar. The moon emerged again, brighter now, and the air felt lighter, warmer. When the opposite bank appeared, Li Wen saw it, his village. Smoke rose from chimneys, dogs barked in the distance. He could almost smell the broth his mother used to make. He stepped ashore, turning to thank the boatman. But the skiff was gone. Only the river remained, calm and unbroken. When Li Wen reached his home, he found the door open. Inside, his mother lay on her bed, frail but breathing. She turned her head, and her eyes filled with tears. "You came back," she whispered. "I told you I would," he said, kneeling beside her. That night, as he sat by her bedside, he thought of the black boat, the silent passengers, and the girl in green who had whispered, "Not yet." For the rest of his life, Li Wen never forgot the sound of that oar dipping into the water, or the way the mist curled like a veil between the living and the dead. He spoke of it to no one, not because he feared disbelief, but because some journeys were meant to be carried in the heart alone. And sometimes, on nights when the river was quiet and the moon hung thin above the water, he would hear a distant creak of wood and the slow splash of an oar, and feel a silent gratitude for the mercy that had let him return.